Yo, welcome back, Hope Squad. Well, today we'll be talking about how to buff properly and a little bit about buffs, telling you guys tips and tricks about buffs. So there are 3 buff units in the game. There's Onwin, there is Xeno or Zero, I forget the person's name, and then there's also King Kai. So Onwin is a green element buffer. That means against green elements. If he buffs any units that are green, like Darkwing, Yukira, then Yukira will get a 50% buff maximum, and if he buffs a different element that's not, then that element unit will get 40% buff. So first off, if you just click a buff, it only lasts for 30 seconds. Well, actually, it says right here, increases the damage of all units within range for 30 seconds. Damage buff is stackable up to 40% or up to 50%. So you can see 43 on him, on Yukira, and 34% on my Goku. This only lasts for 30 seconds. If you do have your Onwin at level 80 max, then if I just click one buff, you'll see 50% on Yuk, and you'll see 40% on Goku. So the way to do this, you're just gonna buff one, and then once it gets to 55 seconds, you're gonna buff again. And then once you see this one get to 30, we're gonna go ahead, slow down the speed at 35, and then at 30, we're gonna buff. You can do it on 3 times as well. It works on 3 times as well. It works on 2 times as well. 2 times is very doable. 1 times is a lot easier. You can see when it hits 30, buffs are gone. I click it again. I wait 5 seconds. And then once it's 55 seconds, then I click again. And then I'm just going to keep it on 1 time for now, because I do have to turn everything to auto. So auto, 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 and auto. So this is how you chain your buffs. You can see it's 43% for Yukira because Onwin is green, and only 34% for Goku because Goku's red. You can chain it, so I'm going to teach you guys how to chain it as well. Now it's fully chained, so you have a 50% buffed Yukira with 15.7k attack, and then you have a Goku with 14.6k attack at 40% buff. If you're still playing AllStarTowerDefenseX, then this is the same way you're going to be buffing as well. Except it's going to be a little harder because you're not going to have this mechanic. You're going to have to do this, and you're going to have to count to 5 or use a timer. And then you're going to have to go to the next one and do it, go to the next one and do it, go to the next one and do it. Also, friends, remember to subscribe for more All-Star Tower Defense content. I am making another video on the new mechanics ASTDX has. Another quick thing about buffs, guys, that I had to learn the hard way. I guess it didn't really matter because All-Star is a pretty easy game. But you see the range of Onwin here? It's very little, right? I've tried spreading it out to like where one is here and one is here. And for some reason it doesn't buff too well. Couldn't figure it out. If anyone knows, feel free to leave that in the comment so that we can get a bigger range. Would be big W. Another thing about buffing, even if your Onwin is, it buffs scale off of your buffer. So let's say my Onwin is only level 1, it's probably not going to buff that much, right? So when I had Xeno, I forgot the unit's name, but when I had the purple buffer buff my purple units, it only buffed by 1% because it was a level 1, right? So if you only have a level 1 buffer, you do have to chain to get the buff to go a lot higher. So to be able to get the max 40 to 50% buff, you have to be playing 1, the correct element, and then 2, you'd have to have either a level 80 buffer or you'd have to have 4 buffers to chain infinite chain buff to get that reaction. Alright, and yeah, because the buffs only last for 30 seconds, if you don't have the level 80 buff, then you can't do it this way. However, if you do have the level 80 buff, then you can just go here and you can just click, and you can see buff is almost to 50. So if this guy was maybe like level 70 or 80, it would probably work. And after you do click, you can always click auto, go back to your abilities here. It's just easier to do this way so you can see, and you can slow it down, and then you can hover here, and when the X's disappear around 30 seconds, you can click again to make sure that you don't mess up the auto chain. So with this way, you're getting a 50 to 40% buff all the time if your buff units are closer to max level. Another thing is if you do 2, you have 4 total. That means you have another spot that you can buff. So you could buff the front of the raid, or you could buff like at the back of the raid, or you could buff like another player's units as well. So you could do buff wherever. So it is nicer to have the max buff, but if you don't have the max buff, you can always do the chain buff. It is a little costly, if your money unit is not maxed, so make sure you have your money unit maxed. But that is how you do the Onwin chain. And another quick thing about buffs is that if you take a look at Onwin's range here, right, only this circle will buff, right? And his initial range looks super big, but that's just for attacking, right? And once you upgrade to his actual buff, it lowers the range, right? What really surprised me was the sphere, right? So All-Star Tower Defense X is kind of funny. They let you place units like all the way up here, right? So like my Goku is way too high. He's not getting the buff. Bro is not getting no buff, right? So buff just activated here and he didn't get it. So he's just way too high. And this actually can happen in multiple areas. There's a lot of funny spots you can put your heal units in All-Star Tower Defense X. And if you put them too high, then you just don't get the buffs, unfortunately. You can see this buff just buffed, and Goku is just too high to receive it. Let's put a base Goku down. And let's take a look. This buff is about to buff right now, and Goku is going to get a 34% buff. Yep, 34% buff, and this Goku is not getting buffed. So you see almost 900 attack here, and you see 631 attack only here. So that is a funny thing to note, because I did try like buffing earlier in Infinite on these trees, and my Yukiras just did not get buffed. So that was pretty funny. With that said, I hope that once you do start working on the Onwin skill tree, that maybe his range will be bigger than this. Also, I do hope that once orbs do come out for this game, that will help with Onwin's range as well. That way you can have a much bigger range, because this is a little bit of space. It's not much, just a little bit of space. It'd be nice to have a much bigger range, similar to like Idol or Speedaholic. I do like that you can just like do the Speedaholic buff, where you just buff here and then 30 seconds buff the other one. That is super nice. In All-Star Tower Defense X, you had to do chain buff all the time with Onwin, and with Crimson Boar as well, and other units. So it is super nice to have that. Make sure you check out my video on the best Ghost 3 farm in ASTD X. Also, it'd be super helpful if you could subscribe. I'm trying to get 2,000 subscribers so that I can get that content creator title. And I also want to invite you to the Discord channel. The link for that should be in the descriptions below, as well as the comments.